Hello, my name is John Burris. Thank you for joining me today for this short video. This video is called Bioenergetic Character Types. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how the body and the mind are connected. My over 40 years of body-mind therapy work has shown me that they're not separate, they're very much connected. That whatever goes on in your mind affects your body. My hope is that by watching this video, you'll be able to have better communication skills with people in your circle, your family, your friends, your relationships, your bosses, your employees. You'll be able to understand your own body better. You'll be able to heal better knowing that your body and your mind are very much connected. So today we'll be exploring, from a body-mind perspective, the bioenergetic character types, and by defining what character you are and those around you, you'll better be able to understand how you relate to one another. In this video, I'm not offering any medical advice or treatments. It's just a new possibility of way to see the world. So you'll be given a new paradigm in order to see yourself and those around you, and able to make changes and to heal many aspects of yourself, or at least to understand how you behave or how your body behaves or those around you behave. So it's just a deeper understanding. So once again, I give you no medical advice or medical treatments, just a new perspective on how to see your world. So how this is different is, in the scientific world, it uses a system called mechanism, where the body and the mind are separate. And the scientific medical community do not believe they're connected. Well, in my work, as a body-mind therapist, I believe they're very much connected. The thoughts and beliefs you carry in your mind directly affect your body. And you can change your body and change your mind at the same time. They're very much connected. So it's stepping out of the 400-year-old Cartesian model that's based on mechanism, that's based on the current scientific medical model, where everything is individual. So in this model, the body-mind are very much connected. And we'll be demonstrating how the mind is changing the body. A lot of the first starting point is, what is the mind? Well, in the scientific medical world, they believe that the brain is the highest of all of our creations. The brain's the ultimate. Being a brain surgeon is the ultimate. And they believe that the mind is a subpart of the brain. That the brain is the highest and the mind is a function of the brain. Well, I don't believe that at all. I have a completely different opinion. Basically, the mind doesn't even live in the brain. The mind travels all over the place, and it passes through the brain, and it goes thousands of miles away, and it goes into your body and changes your cells and your structure of your body, because your mind does not live in your brain. Your mind travels. And this is how I perceive the mind to work. Your brain is here. This is not your mind. Your mind travels. For example, imagine one day waking up and you have a strong thought of your aunt who lives 3,000 miles away. And an hour later, she calls you. Well, guess what happens? So those thoughts that happen inside your mind here are traveling outside your body 3,000 miles away. Because your mind isn't in your body, it's traveling outside. The same thing happens with healing. By changing your mind, you can change the cells in your body, the structure of your body, because your mind is traveling to your cells and to your structure. It's passing through your brain. It doesn't live in your brain. So it goes outside the brain, thousands of miles away. It goes into your body and it changes your whole body concept. So once again, the whole concept of the mind is, to me, it's been squashed by the medical community, where your mind does not live in your brain, and your mind travels through your brain into your cells, and it travels thousands of miles away. So when we study the body-mind connection, we have to understand what the mind really is. The mind can often be described like the cloud on the internet. It doesn't exist on your computer or on your phone, on your laptop. It's a cloud where information gets uploaded to, and it goes to far places of the world. So if you download a picture, you may get part of it comes from next door, another part of it comes from 2,000 miles away, because all the cloud is downloading it. So the mind is much like that. The mind does not exist in the brain. It travels far and wide because it just passes through the brain. But it also affects our physical body, and it affects us outside of our body. So that's the relationship I like to look at it. The mind is like the cloud in the internet world, where it doesn't really exist in our brain. It travels through the brain. Just like the information from the cloud travels through your computer, that's how the mind actually works. There are many popular systems trying to classify us and identify us by different character types. So for example, you have astrology. It's been around for many, many years. It attempts to give you a classification based on your birth date and the alignment of the planets. We have the Briggs-Myers system, which is more of a psychological evaluation. You have the Enneagram, which is also another type of a way of psychoanalyzing people. From the Ayurvedic dosha system based in India, there's different classifications of what your body type is based on your construction of your body. All of these systems do offer some benefit of ways to organize and structure your life. However, I found the most beneficial and valid system to be the bioenergetic character types. I use it every day in my work, in my relationships, in my interaction with people on the street. And to me, it's one of the most accurate ways to identify what somebody's beliefs are in their body and how to interact with them. The bioenergetic character system was developed by Alexander Lowen, who lived from 1910 to 2008. So to be clear, I did not create the bioenergetic character types. All the credit goes to Alexander Lowen. There'll be a link at the end here if you'd like to research more about his work and his facility. I am just borrowing his idea and offering my interpretation, maybe adding and subtracting a few things that I found important in my work with it. So all the credit goes to Alexander Lowen, and I am just borrowing his work and using it and trying to help out, clear it up and identify it. And once again, I might be adding a few things that he didn't say and subtracting a few things, but everything I say is based on the work of Alexander Lowen, and I'm just interpreting his work based on my experience. So Alexander Lowen was a student of Wilhelm Reich, and he was famous for energy and bioenergetics, which is how the energy moves to the body. And I am just playing off of that. And the core principle here is how the beliefs you establish by the time you're 5 years old determine the type of body you have, the shape, your woundedness, your issues, the type of career you'll have, the type of car you'll drive, based on where you got stuck before 5 years old or your basic primal wounding. So beliefs are bioenergetic, and a belief is an energy field that affects the body. And so in the work, Alexander Lowen demonstrates how a certain belief creates either a tall and thin body, or a short and squat body, or a heavy body based on the beliefs in one's mind. So you might often ask, why in a family of 3 or 4 children, 2 are tall and 2 are short? You all have the same genetic makeup. It's based on the core belief systems. Certain character types grow tall and long and thin, and some go short and squat based on which woundingness issues are still stuck in the mind. And those wounds create energy patterns. And those energy patterns develop a certain type of body that explains why certain people in certain families are different shapes and sizes, even though you have the same genetic structures. And here are the different operating systems that we all operate from. The key theme is that we're all built like a tree. The core of ourselves is our core operating systems, then we build a body around that. Well, everybody has a different core and a different system building a different body around that. So for instance, we're all these operating systems. So the earliest one is the schizoid, where you're wounded early on between birth and 1 year old. Then we have the oral wounded between 1 and 2, and the masochist between 2 and 3. And the compensating oral comes along later. And then we have these other layers here, the rigid here in blue. And then at 4 or 5 years old, the psychopathic comes along. So these are all wounded areas that are times in your life where you develop your primary wound based from birth to 5 years old. 5 years old is out here. So we all have these layers and layers in us. And so our initial operating system, so if your operating system here is you have an abandonment issue, and then it gets in your body, you develop a body around that. You develop all these other layers around that operating system. You can also have an operating system here where you're afraid to lose control, and that develops a body around it. But your operating system is different. Then you have an operating system here where you're afraid to lose power. And then you develop a body and all these layers based on the concept of fear of losing power. So we all have different operating systems going on, and they create a different body based on layers and layers of body-mind issues. So the different operating systems determine how the energy flows in your body and which cells are developed. So in this particular person, the energy moves inward, so it's a control issue, so they don't get very tall because the energy, based on their belief, I need control, causes energy to flow inward and it doesn't expand, so you get more of a short, squat body. And this is the character of somebody who's got an abandonment issue. The energy moves outward, so you have more of a taller, thin person because the energy is expanding outward. So the secret to this work is we all develop an operating system based on an early childhood wounding, abandonment, power, control, all shaped before the age of 5 years old. And that determines our physical body, the career choices we want to make, how we interact with people, and it determines how you run your businesses and how countries interact, what world leaders do. So by understanding your character and those around you, you can communicate better and understand what your issues are. And most of these issues show up under stress. When we're under stress, we always fall back to our core issue. I'm afraid of being abandoned. I'm afraid of losing control. I'm afraid of being powerless. So under stress, we return back to our core issue. And if you understand your core issue, life is a lot easier. Now we'll start to explore the 6 different character types, and it will show you how they're all different, and all they have a different operating system and a different way to perceive the world and a different way to feel safe in the world. And if you understand that, it's a whole lot easier in your life, your relationships, your family, and you get along better because you understand what this person is trying to say through their body-mind. So first we'll explore the schizoid, and this is the person who gets their initial wounding from birth to 1 year old, very early on. And initially they don't believe the world's a safe place. There's a scary ass place. The world is never safe. So the core belief from a schizoid is they never feel safe. And here's the wounding pattern developed early on in the very center of the body-mind. From birth to 1 year old, I never feel safe is their core operating system. The schizoid always lived in a sense of terror, always looking over the shoulder, never trusting anybody, always a feeling of paralysis. That terror is their number one emotion. From an energetics perspective, the energy never leaves the core. It's like centered at the core. So they might have cold hands and feet, tight necks, because the energy never moves outward. They're in a self-protective mode where all the energy is directed inward to the core and nothing moves outward. So there's no hugging, there's no reaching. It's all about self-protection and never really feeling safe. The schizoid lives their life paranoid, and it's often become a drug addict because they never feel good. They're trapped in their body. They never feel like they actually belong here, because their early wounding never established a relaxation response. They're stuck in a fear response, and that's determining the size and shape of their body. They're going to be very skinny, very thin, and somewhat tall. They often can be very spiritual because they don't live in their body. They're terrified of their body. They're terrified of contact. They're terrified of intimacy. They're scared all the time. The schizoid's always looking for the demon in the closet. They can't sleep, they can't go to bed because they're terrified to let go. So once again, from a body-mind perspective, their body's often very thin and hard and tight because there's no energy moving outward. One character that I resemble this schizoid is Ichabod Crane from the old story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Tall, thin, a little paranoid, and that's the character of the schizoid. All the energy's moving inward, nothing's moving outward. So one might ask, how does one develop this schizoid personality? Well, modern scientific birthing of children and raising of children causes that. For example, here's baby Joey here, and the modern scientific pediatrician-based way of birthing and raising children is, here, Joey, you go to your room and you go spend the next 8 hours alone by yourself trying to figure out the world. We adults are going to go over here to our bed and spend the night alone, and you're on your own, and we'll call you in the morning and come pick you up and give you something to eat. And so this baby here is developing a belief the world's a scary-ass place and I don't belong here. And that's where the schizoid develops. So in the natural world, with baby Susie here, babies aren't let go of forever. The first 2 or 3 or 4 years of life, somebody's always holding them or sleeping with them or comforting them. They're never left alone, so they develop a belief the world is a safe place. This is how nature intended. This is what scientific birthing has done. It created a schizoid character that teaches us the world's not a safe place because we never imprint safety. So this is natural. This is unnatural based on the scientific model that creates a belief in a child that the world is not safe. And that creates a body of tall, thin, paranoid people because of how science have created our bodies. So this is natural. Never let a child be alone for 2 or 3 years. And that creates a belief the world's a safe place I can relax. This person has no chance of relaxing because they were denied that. The schizoid character is often someone who uses a lot of drugs, caffeine, nicotine, street drugs, because they don't feel good. They don't feel much at all. So they're medicating themselves. But there's good things about them. Since they don't really live in their body, they can be very artistic, very spiritual, very enlightened, have insights from outside of ourselves because they spend a lot of time not in their body, and their mind travels a lot. They can be very creative, very fantasy-oriented. So those are some really good things about this character type. But they will be tall and thin. They'll fear hugging and intimacy because they don't trust anybody. No one's ever trusted. Also, as a body worker, I can tell you, usually this character, the back of their neck is frozen solid because this is a very primal stress response. So a schizoid will always have a really tight neck and paralyzed because they're always in a state of fear, always looking for safety somewhere because they're tightening up from the inside out. Once again, this person, they never develop a sense of trust. So their relationships, they can have relationships, but it's usually based on, we go to movies together or we read books together. There's a very lack of intimacy because they don't trust anybody to protect them. No one ever came to pick them up and care for them. So they don't ever believe anybody's going to come care for them anymore. So they're always wary of relationships and intimacy because they don't trust. And that's a big part of their physical body-mind issue. He also has a way of being cut off from his emotional world. Very unemotional, lives in his head. Somebody who can't express emotion at all, very heady, nerdy. They often have a high pain tolerance because they don't feel. They've cut off feeling and sensation because it's too much to feel. So they have a high pain tolerance. Healing from this character type, the two things that are really important is learn how to be in your body. Get massages and body work, but take it slow. You may not trust a therapist to work on you. Get a foot reflexology session. Get a scalp massage. Start slowly learning how to feel your body. Practice yoga, practice expansion, practice breathing. Start to get the energy to move inside out. And to start to work on developing relationships where maybe people are going to disappoint you, but learn to feel disappointment. You have to learn in relationship how to trust people. So those are some key elements to healing from this character type, this operating system. The classic way to say it is put down the book, put down the computer, put down the phone, go for a walk in nature, jump in the ocean, go take a yoga class. Because those are the things that this character doesn't want to do. They want to stay in their head and not feel. Teach them how to feel and get into their body. The second character is called the oral character. And the wounding is early on from 1 to 2 years old. And the basic theme of the oral character is, I'm afraid of being abandoned. And they grow usually tall and thin and whatnot. So the basic theme, though, is fear of abandonment. So here's the basic theme for the oral character. They got wounded between birth and 2 years old, where they experienced an abandonment issue and they got locked in there. The basic energy pattern for an oral is there's energy that moves outward, but it's very weak. It's not a strong flow at all. It's a very weak energy outward. The oral character often has a collapsed body too, even though they might be tall and thin. They're not strong and powerful in their body. It's a very shrunken body where they collapse. So one of the characteristics of the oral is long legs and long arms and long spine, long limbs, because the energy is moving outward, but it's not strong, but it's moving outward. So you get a long torso and long legs and arms. There's many characteristics of the fear of abandonment from the oral. The fear of rejection, fear of asking for what they want, fear of being direct, fear of confrontation, fear of being alone. You'll see often the oral character will surround themselves with lots of animals and children because they're terrified of being alone. They're terrified of this alone feeling because their basic core belief is, don't abandon me. Become the snuggable character. They love to snuggle, watch TV and snuggle. They huggers and caretakers and whatnot because they're very huggable. But they can also be very clingy. Don't leave me. There's people who will phone call or text or email their significant others 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. I want to know you're still there. There are the people who, as adults, call their parents 3 times a day. Call their children, never leave their children alone because they're so afraid of abandonment. Their whole life is making sure their circle of people are still there. They also become passive and non-aggressive. They can't confront because confrontation means somebody might not like them and that means they'll abandon them in their mind and perception. So they fear those confrontations, direct conflict, because they're so afraid of abandonment. Their operating system is, don't abandon me. So for example, if an oral character goes into a supermarket and wants a paper bag, they won't demand it. They'll beg for it. Can I please have a paper bag? They're so afraid of rejection or somebody saying no that they spend their life avoiding rejection. That's the character type of the oral character. Usually they don't get angry, but they can be extremely explosive. This happens in a lot of road rage and a lot of relationship issues. So when the oral character who's not processed his emotions feels abandoned, his wife says, I want to get a divorce, he goes into a rage because he's not able to feel grief and loss. So he uses anger as a cover-up to cover up the proper emotion, which is loss and abandonment and grief. So an oral character can be extremely rageful because they don't have a relationship with grief and loss, so they use anger to cover up when they feel abandoned. If they stored up all their anger from years and years and put it in a bucket, and then something happens at work, at home, and they go ballistic. It could be politics, because they've held all their rage inside into a bucket, and they decide one day they want to dump it out and go explosive. So the oral character doesn't necessarily feel anger. They use anger to cover up their abandonment, their grief, their loss when they feel a sense of grief or loss. So the oral character is often tuned into other people's needs. They become very codependent very easily. Because if I can take care of you, then you won't leave me. If I can help you, then you'll be there for me. It's a cycle. So the oral character is always looking to take care of somebody, because it's a sense of satisfaction and safety. If somebody needs me, they won't leave me. And so their whole life is spent looking for places and people who need them, so they're never left. The oral character make great rescuers, great helpers, great nurses, teachers, other people who rescue, because by rescuing, people need you and they won't leave you. It's a sense of safety. It's an operating system. It's a strategy for survival. If I can find people who are needy, they won't leave me. That's how it works with the oral. The oral character is very intimate and very much in relationship, because they want to bond with somebody to feel safe. But the problem is they often merge with that person. They lose their own identity. Or you see a couple and become one. They don't have separate identities because they became one. So they don't have boundaries with the oral, because they merge with other people, because they're so needy to not feel abandoned. They try to bond with other people, and they develop very intimate relationships, but it's hard for them to separate because they merge together with people. So for example, when an oral character says to you, "I love you," what he or she is really saying is, "Don't leave me." There's a hidden message behind it. "I love you" usually means "don't leave me." And that's the operating system that's operating. So there are ways for an oral is to have boundaries. You can have intimate relationships. Healing means being aware of your abandonment issues. Abandonment could be something like somebody didn't text you right away, and now you feel they left you, they're dead, they're gone. Somebody didn't return a phone call right away. So if you can identify that feeling when you start to feel agitated or angry, that's abandonment. Something happens and it stirs up your abandonment issue. Now you're reacting to it. So healing for an oral is to recognize when you feel abandonment, and you can start working with that issue. It's also important for the oral to learn rejection and loss, develop a relationship with grief and loss and separation, because most the orals want to do is bond with people, to feel safe. Learn how to be alone. Learn how to separate. Take a vacation by yourself, not your spouse, for a week. That's healing for an oral, where you learn to have boundaries, that I'm a separate person. You learn to be safe in your own skin and don't look for needy people who need you. So this is the depiction of an oral character. Tall and thin, mild, meek. I would say like the Clark Kent in the Superman series. Very meek, very quiet and shy, and a little bit collapsed. That would be the oral character. The next character is called the masochist. Why even try? Life is such a burden. Aging 2 to 3 years old where you feel the wound. The masochist body is often heavier, collapsed in a way where it's a slow, sluggish energy. So the way the energy works in the masochist is there's a strong energy inside, but it never gets outside. It's a very strong core energy, but a very weak out energy, because they don't mix. So the age of wounding for the masochist is age 2 to 4. There's a sense of burden. Life's a burden. Why even try? There's no energy. There's no motivation. These are people who aren't going to take risk. They're going to get jobs, for example, a librarian, a city worker, where you have a steady paycheck that you don't have to go out and look for a job and try to make it in the world or be an entrepreneur. You can get a steady paycheck for 30, 40 years. Show up at your job, pick up a paycheck, don't take a lot of risk. Life's too heavy, too much of a burden. Why try? Just get along and get through the day. Often this period is when a child goes through toilet training. You have a dominant parent who's pushing too hard, and the child is rebelling, and it becomes this inner conflict. And so the person develops an operating system like, why even try? I can't defeat the adult. Why even try? They lose a sense of self, and they develop an operating system that says, why try? It's just, life's a struggle. Why push it? Why reach out? Body's heavy, short, thick neck, heavy arms, heavy legs, often carrying a lot of fat because they don't move a lot. They're low energy, low vibration. Their energy, like I said, is very strong at their core, so they can erupt in a violent anger because their core is very strong, but their energy moving outward is very weak. So their tissues outward don't get a lot of life force energy outward. They have a very flat body, flabby, energy reduced. They're not going to exercise a lot. They're going to just get through life and do the minimum. Again, they can be highly charged. They can be highly charged if you agitate them. They can explode from the inside out because they have an inner rage that's still boiling inside. They're like a volcano. And their outside doesn't have any energy, but if they can move the energy outside, it becomes a rage. So this is the character type of the masochist who got stuck here at basically 2 to 4 years old, where they have an inner operating system that says, why even try? The good side is they can be very loyal and dependable people. They trust others, and they work well in relationships, and they're very loyal and dependable and get things done, and they bond in relationships. The healing from the masochist is to reduce the self-sabotage, the guilt, the control issues, and learn to feel life and to be free and have emotions, and try to get some of the energy to move outward and take risk, go on vacations, go take risk and try new things. Normally the masochist doesn't want to try new things. They get stuck in their patterns. So healing is very possible for the masochist, but you have to give them hope that life is worth living, and it's okay to take risk. So for the masochist, stop complaining. They're really great at complaining. Everything's always wrong with the world. Just be grateful every day. Get them to laugh more and have fun and stop complaining, because they really have a sense of the world's a miserable place. Why try? So laughter and connection and getting them to feel their bodies, and those are great healing tools for the masochist. The next operating system, bioenergetic character type, is called the compensating oral. Happens from 2 to 4 years of life, and the basic theme is they're strong on the outside, but they're very weak and mild and scared on the inside. So it's an inside-out split. So the energy pattern is they have a strong inner pattern of inner energy, and the energy does move outward, but it's very weak moving outward. Their core identity is the inside, but they compensate by putting an outer shell around it that's very weak. The compensating oral, the outer body is very strong and athletic and physically fit, but the inside is, don't abandon me, don't leave me, I don't feel safe being alone. So that's the conflict. Outside is strong and independent, the inside is, don't leave me, don't abandon me. The character that most identifies for me of the compensating oral is Superman. Strong hero on the outside, but the inside is weak and shallow and just looking for a mother to hold him. That's the compensating oral character. So once again, the basic concept of the compensating oral is weak on the inside, but strong and inflated on the outside. They're taught to say, I can't show weakness, so I have to exhibit the world from a strength position. So these are people who are athletic, tall, strong, athletic. They travel the world, they're independent. They look like they can handle life, but their core issues are not solved. Those are the abandonment issues, where in relationship they crumble. They might be the Mr. Fitness in the world, but when their wife or husband leaves them, they crumble because their operating system is still abandonment. But they demonstrate on the outside how strong and independent they are because that's their survival technique. In order to survive, I can't show weakness, I have to show strength. So they're always ready to do things. They're always moving and traveling and building and developing an armored body, a strong armored body, because they can't show the inner weakness, so they have to demonstrate on the outside as a protective armor layer that don't hurt me because I'm strong, but the reality is they're very weak on the inside because they still fear being abandoned. They're overly independent, like I don't need anybody, I'll do it myself, I don't need help, because they basically, if I trust people, they might screw it up and abandon me. So why would I trust people? So there are trust issues because they've learned that people don't always say what they're do what they're going to say. So they've learned to do it themselves and be strong on the outside because they don't want to be left or abandoned again. This character in a lot of, especially basketball players, professional athletes who are tall and muscular, their core issue is abandonment, don't leave me. But their outside shell says I'm strong and tough and fierce on the outside, but their core issue is they're afraid to be abandoned. And this is the split in this energy pattern that started around 2 to 4 years old, where they had an abandonment experience and it got locked in and it became their operating system. The compensating oral, in relationship, for example, they're looking for a partner to do stuff with. Let's go skiing together. Let's go surfing together. Let's go traveling together. They're looking to match the outer shell because the inner shell is so afraid of abandonment. Why would I want to get that close to you emotionally? So in a relationship, they're always having an outer relationship where they're looking for people to match their interests and hobbies, and that's how they relate, because the outer world is safer than the inner world. They can be intimate and they seek intimacy, but they also have a trust of intimacy and a fear of loss. So most of their relationships are based on the outer shell, the compensation. Let's find people we can do stuff together with. Once again, their outer shell is usually their operating system, where they can be good rescuers because they need people to need them. They helpers. They're good people to connect with. And they can be very intimate once they cross the line and get back into their inner world, their inner self, their core self, which is fear of abandonment. If they learn to feel their feelings from the inside, and not be so hard on the outside. For the oral means to break the shell. Try to live from the inside, not the outside, which is your deep, intimate self, the fear of abandonment, and learn to trust, learn to have working, intimate relationships, and not be so hard and defended on the outside, because you have to get to the inner self. That's where the real healing is going to happen, because most compensating orals live from the outside, the shell. But really healing comes, spend time on the inside, practice feeling work, study your emotions, learn how to grieve and let go and trust. And so you start healing the abandonment issue that is really the deepest part of the issue. The next character is called the rigid, where the operating system gets established between 3 and 4 years old. It's a fear of being out of control or being controlled. The rigid has an operating system where the energy flows outward, but it's weak. There's a strong protection around the heart. What they do in a relationship is they barter. I'll give you this if you give me that. I'll share with you this if you give me that. So they do a little bartering system. So their heart's very protective, and that's where the energy settles in. The rigid character is very compact, so they make good gymnasts. Also, the rigid character makes a good astronaut because they're very loyal and they're mission driven. They follow orders well. Rigid is always afraid of losing control or being controlled by others. They don't want somebody to tell them no. They have a sense of mission and they basically have purpose. They are good workers and follow orders well and whatnot. They also they do really well in groups and relationships because they mix well, they bond well, but their general energy is very short and compact. It's like different than the oral characters, tall and thin. The rigid is very compact, shorter in neck and torso and legs, because the energy isn't moving outward as much. It's stuck in the heart area. Physically, they have a locked jaw, tight neck, tight chest, often muscular and rigid and hard because they're ready for action. They're ready to accomplish the mission. They're doers. They get things done. They follow the orders they're given. So their bodies are often very tight and rigid and hard. People who have the mentality, just do it, that failure is not an option. They'll just keep driving through fire and rain until they get things done because they see the end goal, and that could be good and that could be bad. So these are the people who might tear a hamstring during a race because they don't know when to quit. They just keep going and going and going. They're like the little worker bunnies there. They keep moving forward. They're doers. Also very structured. There's very much a lack of spontaneity. They have a rigid set of rules and they don't want to deviate from those rules. So they're very rule conscious. And once again, their basic theme in life is fear of being controlled or being out of control. They exhibit a lot of pride and independence, but their fear of losing control, fear of too much intimacy. And once again, in a relationship, they'll barter. I'll give you this if you give me that, and I'll give you that if you give me this. So it's a bartering system. They don't give away too much intimacy at once. It's a step by step by step. Once they get a little bit, they'll give some, give a little bit, give some. So it's a step-by-step intimacy system. Often their love was based on performance from a parent, where they got the message that the parent would love them if they performed duties. They got good grades or they did their task or whatnot or whatever. So their love was conditional. And they learned to be in control all the time. Sense of they had too many responsibilities too early, where they had to grow up and be an adult too early, and this was not good. They also see that life is a problem to be solved, not a mystery or a joyful. It's a problem to be solved. So every day they're ready and at attention, ready to solve a problem. So yeah, they're good problem solvers, but they spend their life looking for a problem to solve. Once again, the physical body of the rigid is short and compact, which is great for certain jobs, fireman, gymnast, athlete, astronaut, soldier, where you need a task done. They're great at getting tasks done. They're strong, they follow orders, they don't waver from the path, they have a mission responsibility, they're loyal to the cause, they're very patriotic, but their energy doesn't move out, it's stuck in the heart area, so their body doesn't grow tall and thin, it grows short and compact. A lot of healing for the rigid character is more spontaneity. Instead of working out, go swim at the beach, play frisbee, do something where you're not competing, do something where you're not winning or losing or having to dominate or conquer. Go on a vacation, take some time off, let go of all the rules and rigidity. Those are healing strategies for the rigid character type. A lot of the healing for the rigid is not being productive. You don't have to keep producing to get love, because a lot of their core issues come from the 3 to 4 year old age, when they believed in order to get love from a parent, they had to produce. So for the rigid, it's stop being a production addict, an achievement addict, stop having to achieve and produce. And that's a big part of the healing for the rigid character. And the last character is called the psychopathic, wounding age is around 2 to 4. And their whole issue is fear of being powerless or being overpowered. The basic energy pattern is they have a strong inner pattern and a strong outer pattern, but they often don't blend. They can have deep, intimate relationships as long as they're in the power position. They always need to look good on the outside. There's different characters for both men and women. For a male, it's a strong outer shell, looking powerful on the outside, often with very watchful eyes. Female version of the psychopathic is also always very seductive. If I can get you to want me, then I will always have power over you. That's the seduction principle. Character for the male would be like Napoleon Bonaparte. Smaller in stature, but more compact, watchful eyes, always needing power. And a character for the female version would be like a Marilyn Monroe, the seductress. I need you to want me, and that way I always have power. So the psychopathic has basically energy that's strong on the outside. They always need to look good on the outside. They have a strong inside energy too, but they don't often blend. Once again, they can have really deep, intimate relationships as long as they're in the power position. They can let go. They won't let go of power to have intimacy. They can have intimacy as long as they still have the power. And so that's how they work. They're often very good at starting businesses and leaders and generals and presidents and whatnot because they need the power. They own companies. They own Fortune 500 companies because they need to be in a position of power. That's their core belief. So in a way, they're still operating out of their childhood wound when they're starting a business. So this is how they establish power, by always being on top. They make good eye contact. They use their eyes as weapons sometimes to seduce you and to check you out. The psychopathic male is always very eye weary. They're always scanning the surroundings to make sure there's nobody threatening his power. Always looking, how can I stay in power? What's the strategy I need to keep using to keep powerful? They hate losing at anything. It could be checkers. They're always very competitive. Their biggest fear is losing power. They can, the raffle in business, they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose at bingo. They don't want to lose at fantasy football. They don't want to lose. They're always looking to stay in power. They could be the owner of a professional sports team because they're always looking to be powerful and in charge. They have a feeling of never surrender. Surrender means death. So they keep pushing and forging ahead because they're so afraid of loss of power. They never surrender. Strategies for staying in power. You could be sneaky or direct bullying. Often a bully is a psychopathic who needs to basically overpower people. So in one instance, in a business I worked at many years ago, I had a boss who was a psychopathic character, and I had forgotten to do something that was part of my job responsibility, and she was really upset. So she played the two parts. So first, she bullied me. She screamed at me and yelled at me and bullied me for being an idiot for forgetting. And I stood there and didn't react because I understood her character. And then when she saw that it wasn't working, she started seducing me. Oh, baby, I love you. Oh, baby, I love you. You know, you're great. So she started using the seduction method because both methods are part of power. Either bullying or seduction are still ways to stay in power. The psychopath never wants to be challenged for power. They always want to have the last word. They'll use techniques like manipulation where they'll say one thing and do something else because their core agenda is don't surrender, never give up power, keep being on top. So an interesting thing about the psychopathic, often they surround themselves with other psychopathics. For example, you might find a very exclusive men's club where men meet and all the power people gather together and share their stories of how they're building wealth and how they're collecting, because they they have an agreement psychologically. We're all the power people meeting together, and I'm one of them. But they often surround themselves with weaker people because they're in power. For example, they find people who are needy and much weaker who need them, and that way they still maintain power. So I've seen over and over again how very powerful psychopathic characters surround themselves with very needy, weak people, and that's how they feel powerful. Again, they're very good at being CEOs and generals and presidents and owners of companies and whatnot. They can be very psychic because they have power issues. They see the bigger picture and they're always in charge. The big healing for a psychopathic is learn to self-empower rather than stealing power from somebody else. To learn that power is generated from the inside, not the outside. That you can be powerful from the inside and you don't have to take other people's power or dominate or bully or seduce other people to be in power. So that's the big healing for the psychopathic. You can be in relationships too that are more equal, that you don't have to have the power relationship, and you can be intimate with the other person without having to be the power person. So those are the healing tools for the psychopathic in relationship. Those are the 6 characters. We all have different operating systems. And it's interesting because it's kind of like we're playing a game of life, but we're all speaking different languages. So the analogy I like to use is life is like a chessboard in a ways. So for example, some of these pieces move diagonally. Some of these pieces move straight ahead. Some of these pieces move sideways. Some can jump over a couple spots. They're all moving differently. They all have different operating systems. So the game of life is much the same. We have different operating systems and we don't understand it. So how are we going to understand life? Because we're not having the same beliefs. Those different beliefs are basically creating a different operating system. So the chessboard is moving in different ways these pieces are moving, and we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing, but we don't even know because we don't understand how each of us has a different operating system. So those are the character types. I find it incredibly helpful for me anyways, to know what my operating system is, those around me, the people I engage with in business and friends and family. I can understand politics much better based on, does this politician want power or they want to be liked? You know, there's a difference between a leader who's a psychopath who wants power and a compensating aura who just wants people to like him and not be abandoned. Their decision making is completely different. So it explains why certain politicians make certain decisions. If we understand how this system works, we can have a greater communication skills in life. So here's the steps to healing. Identify your character pattern. Second is identify the character patterns of those around you. And then 3, adjust your way of communicating and acting. So when you identify how each character works, you can change your behavior and your communication skills. Basically, you approach each person differently. An oral character is always going to fear abandonment. A power psychopath person is always going to fear being powerless. A rigid is going to always fear losing control. So if you learn how each person operates, just like the chessboard, you can have greater relationships, greater communication skills. For instance, understanding the difference between power and control. Power is having a general outcome of a situation. Control is more detail-oriented. For example, the owner of a professional sports team has the power. He or she writes the checks. The team manager or coach has control. They determine how to train the players. They're very different. In a military situation, the general has the power. He determines the outcome. The sergeant of the platoon has control of how to train his troops. They're very different. Identifying things like, what does abandonment look like? Well, somebody doesn't text you right away. They didn't get back to you right away, and then you feel anxiety. Why? Because you just felt abandoned again. Your core issue's been activated. Learn to identify what your core issue is and when it comes up. For example, what would happen if we understood relationships better? Two psychopaths, which are power people, get together. They could be a dynamic power couple as long as they don't kill each other trying to have power over each other. If they can work together, they can be a dynamic power couple, but if they try to conquer each other's power, then it becomes dangerous. For example, two ridges getting together, they have a control issue, but they barter for control. I'll give you this, I'll give you that. If you understood that, makes for a much more dynamic relationship. And for instance, two orals who get together, they merge with each other. Understanding how that works, you become basically a loving, intimate couple as you become one. What happens in work situations and relationships, we have all kinds of conflicts because of how we don't understand our character type. You can be an oral wanting connection, fear of abandonment, and you're with a rigid who wants control, and you can't understand why it's not working. You can be a compensating oral, and you're in a relationship with a psychopathic who wants power, wondering why you never get to make decisions on your own. So if we understood our character types, we understand our operating systems, and our world would be so much easier and more efficient. The problem is we're like the pieces on the chessboard. We're all moving in different directions with different languages, and we don't understand which language we're speaking. So thank you for watching today in this very in-depth study of the work of Alexander Lowen. And once again, I give all the credit to Alexander Lowen. I'm just trying to interpret some of the work and make it user-friendly. I'll send a link here, a resource at the end if you want to follow the links. I have a wonderful article I wrote that gives you more in-depth if you just want to read about it. Alexander Lowen has all kinds of books about it. So it's a great study if you want to learn more about yourself, your relationships, your people in your work environment, people in the world, why things work the way they work, because we all have different operating systems, and they're all based on wounding. By the time we're 4 to 5 years old, we develop a core belief system, and this work shows you how, once again, the mind is not in the brain. The mind travels far off or into our cellular system, and it creates a physical body that's different. Each belief carries an energy pattern that affects your cellular structures. This is how body-mind therapy works. Your mind creates your body. We're not just empty cells randomly moving around here and there. Whatever you think about and whatever you believe is affecting your physical structure. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more, you can subscribe to this channel for more leading edge videos to come. I also have a great book called Return to Nature, The 5 Pillars of Healing. You can pick that up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or my website, johnburris.com. Please join me there. Thank you for joining me.